Today we're going to go over my top tips for buying things secondhand, and this video is going to be broken up into two parts. We're first going to talk about buying things secondhand in person, and then we're going to talk about buying things secondhand online. But before we do get into the tips, I'd also like to remind you that secondhand shopping, although it's such a great way to shop sustainably, we still can overconsume secondhand items. I personally recently overconsumed a bit too much secondhand items. I've spoken about that in a previous video. So that's just something to be really mindful of when you are secondhand shopping. But with that in mind, please shop consciously, shop mindfully, and do let me know if you find anything special. Okay, so let's get started. So we're starting with the tips to shop secondhand in person. So my first tip is just a mindset tip, something to be really aware of. You have to definitely start here before you start shopping secondhand in person, because it is very important. When you are walking through charity shops, you are gonna see a lot of crap, like just a lot. And you have to be really patient when you sift through this stuff. So that is my first tip. It is just to be patient. You have to be willing to just kind of go and flick through every item in that shop to actually find the gems that are hidden between all of the mess. And you have to go in knowing you might find nothing that day, and that is okay. So nowadays, I personally try to not browse secondhand shops unless I have something in mind, or unless it's like a vintage market or a specific vintage shop that I wouldn't be able to go to lots. Like if I was traveling or something, I would then go in and just see if anything special popped out to me. I like to shop secondhand in person with things on my wish list. But with that being said, I think charity shops in person are such good places to find really unique, special things. So if you are browsing, then that's fine. I'm just personally trying to get out of that habit. Browsing for really unique pieces in secondhand shops is really, really, really fun. In terms of like things on my wish list, sometimes things have been on my wish list for ages, and I'll go into secondhand shops upwards of like 10 times without finding that item, and then on the 11th time I finally find that item that's perfect for me. I'm not going into secondhand shops thinking that I'm going to find something every time and I'm going to find something on my list. I just have a lot of patience and hope that something will come out one day. So my tip number 2 is to ignore the brands. Don't look at the brands. Don't worry about where something is from. Worry more about the fabric and the quality of that item. Focus more on the color, the fabric, and whether it's going to suit you and it's what you're looking for. So in terms of fabric, things I like to look out for is just good quality fabric, making sure, like personally, making sure it's not polyester, making sure that the seams are in good condition and like it looks like it's actually a good quality piece. Like actually inspect it. You can tell if the stitching looks poor, I would consider whether it's worth it. Also things that might be itchy on my skin, I try to avoid that, or something that looks like it's gonna go static as well. I find that a lot of things in charity shops can be static because people get rid of them because they're annoying because they're super static. Those are the types of things that I like to look out for in terms of fabric and quality of the pieces in charity shops. So my tip number 3 is to not limit yourself to your size only. So this will obviously depend on what size you are to begin with, but for me, I personally like to look for my size. I like to look for a size up and another size up and even another size up. Like it doesn't matter. I look at any size. I just am not really fussed with this size. I'm more concerned about the fit, because you know brands differ in sizes so much, so you just never know what size you're going to be at a charity shop. And also, like, I love that oversized look for some certain pieces, so I'll always look like a couple of sizes up depending on what I'm actually looking for. And another tip is also, in terms of size, if it suits your personal style, you can look into the men's section too. I find that the men's section is really good for like oversized t-shirts or oversized blazers that have that like boxy men's shape to it. So yeah, that's another little tip. So that brings me to tip number 4, and that is to generally have an open mind when you are shopping secondhand. For example, if you find the perfect trousers, they are great length, they're a great style, they're a great color, they're everything that you've been looking for, except they're just like a little bit too big around your waist. Ask yourself if you can get them altered. I know some people shop secondhand to save money, not necessarily to shop sustainably. So if money is a concern to you, obviously you've got to weigh up like your options and if it's really worth it for you. But basic alterations aren't super expensive, and if it is that perfect piece that you've been looking for, just add on the alterations cost and decide whether or not that is worth it for you, and if it's cheaper than, you know, buying that thing new to begin with. So I personally like shopping secondhand more because it's like a sustainable choice. That's why I like secondhand shopping, and the cost of alterations for me are often worth it because I'm usually trying to get something secondhand before I'm trying to get it new. So recently I got a suit vest from Depop secondhand, and the brand was Target, so like it's not like a really expensive brand, and I knew it was going to be too big. It was a size 10. When I bought it, I knew that I was going to pay to get it altered, and some people might think, well, like getting a Target piece is like, why would you get that altered? But to me, it was the perfect piece in every way. It was just a little bit too big, and it just needed a little alteration under the arm, which I think cost about $15. So to me, it was worth it, and it just depends what your values are. That's gonna be different for everyone. So I would just, when you're shopping secondhand in person, keep an open mind. But with that being said, if you find something that needs alterations in many places and it's going to cost a lot, then it's probably not worth it, and not like, it just probably wasn't meant to be. So be realistic with what kind of alterations you can and can't do. So my next tip is to explore lots of different secondhand shops in your area and really get to know those secondhand shops, because they all differ, at least they do here in Australia. Like some are more boutique and really selective with the things that they bring in, and others will just like bring in everything. Kind of getting to know which ones in your area you like, because they can all be so different. You can also ask the people who work there like when they bring out new things. Some of the boutique places only like bring out their new items like once a week or once every 2 weeks, and some people bring out new items every day. So you can ask, just get to know your local charity shops and what they do. One of my favorite secondhand shops in Sydney is actually not a charity shop. It's called Venla, and there's 3 stores in Mossman, Bondi and Balmain. So each rack in the shop sells one person's collection of secondhand clothes, and they stay on that rack for 2 weeks, and then every 2 weeks there's a new person's rack. And if you want to sell your secondhand clothes, you can hire out the rack and sell your secondhand clothes there, and it's usually like a really good quality secondhand clothes. You can get like designer, at least the one in Mossman is like designer clothes, or just like your classics like Zara and Country Road and Seed and like all those kind of brands as well. But they're usually like really on trend and really nice and good quality stuff. So if you're in Sydney, highly recommend Venla. You are welcome. So my tip number 6 is to dress comfortably when you're secondhand shopping in person, because you often have to try on a lot of crap, and trying on things is your only way to kind of know if it's going to be right or wrong. So dress comfortably. If you're going for a specific item like a blazer or something, like what would you usually wear with a blazer? Are you wanting to pair it with your high-waisted jeans and a t-shirt? Well, then wear that high-waisted jeans and a t-shirt. Often if I'm secondhand shopping in summer, I just put on like a dress that's like really easy to get off and on, slip-on shoes, really easy to slip on and off. So just think about those things when you are secondhand shopping in person. It will just make things run a lot more smoothly and more stress-free. So like I said earlier, I personally think thrifting in person is really good to find those really like unique special pieces to add like a bit of flair and personality into your wardrobe. And these pieces weren't exactly things that like are on your wish list or things that you've searched for specifically online. Some of my favorite pieces have been things that I found in like vintage stores just by accident. So this is definitely like a really good thing to do if you are trying to like add in a bit of personality into your wardrobe. But then I find that secondhand shopping online is usually easier in a way. Even though you can't try things on, you can at least like search for really specific things, which is really good for online shopping. So you can, you know, narrow it down with your search to that exact item that you want. So with that being said, it's time to talk about secondhand shopping online. Okay, so obviously online can be really tricky because you can't try anything on. But like I said, it's easier in a way because you have that search function. So personally, my favorite 2 places to online shop are Depop and Facebook Marketplace. And then I do a little bit on Vestiaire Co as well if I'm looking for something a bit more high end. So I will link Vestiaire Co and Depop in the description for you guys. So my first tip for shopping secondhand online is also a mindset shift tip. and that is to be okay with making mistakes. So understand that every purchase that you make online, secondhand, could actually be a mistake. So when I'm personally thinking about shopping something online, I'm also thinking about how would I feel about trying to sell that item if it doesn't turn out to be the right item? Do I feel confident in thinking that I can resell that again afterwards? Or if I don't feel confident, am I willing to take the risk of losing the money that I've paid for that item to see whether it is right or wrong? So this is what I ask myself first before buying anything online secondhand. And there are also a few things that I do to try to reduce the mistakes, of course. So let's talk about those now. The first thing I do is to understand and know my measurements at the time. And of course, compare those measurements to the piece of clothing that I'm buying. So if the person that is selling an item of clothing hasn't listed the measurements, I'll always message them and ask for the measurements just to make sure that things are going to fit me correctly. So if you don't know your measurements, grab yourself a measuring tape, probably get one off Amazon really cheap, and take your measurements. If your measurements don't fluctuate, then you can just write them down in the notes section of your phone and easily refer back to them in the future. If you're unsure of how to take your measurements properly, just do a little Google search, find some images, go onto YouTube, see if there's any tutorials to make sure that you're measuring the right places. Or you could always go to like a tailor and get them to measure you in the right places and get your measurements if you're really not confident to do it yourself. But yeah, just knowing your measurements will definitely help reduce buying things online that are going to be wrong. So the main measurements you'll probably want to measure are your bust, your waist, your hips, and your inseam. The inseam of all the trousers that I buy, because you really want to know where that trouser is going to hit on your ankle. If it's going to be too long, if it's going to be too short, that's a really important one to ask when you're buying trousers online. So that brings me to my next tip, and that is to ask the seller as many questions as possible. Don't be afraid to ask them for more photos or videos as well. Videos can be really helpful to see how the item moves when you're wearing it. This can be really nice for like dresses and stuff. I have asked things like in the past, like if the fabric's itchy, what it feels like. People are usually really honest because like these things are based on reviews. So if someone's gonna lie to me and tell me that a fabric is itchy, it isn't itchy, and then I buy it and it turns out to be itchy, then they're gonna risk getting a pretty bad review from me. So I find that people are quite honest with things like that. So I recently asked if something was itchy and the girl was like, yeah, it is really quite itchy. So I was like, okay, I'm not gonna buy that. So yeah, just don't be afraid to ask questions, more photos, more videos. A lot of people, when they sell things, don't post a photo of it being worn, and things can often look a lot better when they're not on a person, and then you see them on and you're like, oh, it kind of sits funny on this part, or that's why they're selling it because it doesn't quite look great around the neck or whatever. Also, when you see it on someone else, it might not necessarily look the same as you because we all have different body shapes and sizes. So keep that in mind at the same time when you are looking at the item on someone else. My next tip is to make offers. So I've gotten some offers that have been like really low offers that have been accepted, and I've been really surprised by that. So definitely just offer something lower and see. Someone might be really keen to get rid of something, you never know. So moving on to my next tip, I said earlier to ignore the brands when shopping secondhand items in person. But when you are shopping secondhand online, I think knowing the brands that you like and the brands that suit your personal style can be really helpful for shopping secondhand online. So we're going to talk about that a bit more now. This one has to do with Depop. I love shopping on Depop because Depop really understands me. The algorithm really understands me, and what I would do to kind of make the algorithm understand you is search brands that you like, brands that you tend to wear a lot of that reflect your personal style really well, and then save a couple of those items. Depop will then start to understand what you're into and what kind of style you gravitate to and what kind of pieces you're looking out for, and then they'll start showing those items to you on the home feed. Of course, you still have to sift through a lot of random stuff to find things that you like, but once you start interacting with the app more, it really does get to know you a bit better. And yeah, I find that just in a scary way, Depop knows me really well. And with that being in mind, you do have to be really careful when you are browsing these platforms as well. I just want to like put that out into the world that like browsing these platforms can be like a massive dopamine hit. So I personally am trying to get out of the habit of like getting a dopamine fix from browsing Depop. So if I notice myself browsing just for no reason and that like I'm getting like excited to browse, I'll just try to like snap out of it and go get some dopamine from somewhere else. So do some star jumps, play some fun music, go outside, get some sunshine, something like that. Just kind of like make sure that I'm not getting into a bad habit with my secondhand shopping. So when you're looking for your perfect item online and you are searching for something specific, you want to get really specific with your search terms. If I'm looking for a new pair of black boots, I want to describe them as well as I can. So I might search for black square toe boots with a small heel. And then I'll search that and I'll look through everything. And then, this is the key, I'm going to search for that again, but use like a different phrase or a different search term. Try to get into the mind of someone else. So instead of describing the heel as a small heel, I'm going to describe it as a low heel, and then I'm going to research for it. And doing this like can sometimes bring up a completely different selection of items because everyone describes things differently, right? So just, try to search different things to see if different things pop up. So my next tip for shopping secondhand online is to shop out of season. I feel like when you're shopping out of season, there's less competition for those items, which is really nice. Try to offer lower, like I said earlier. And I feel as though if something's out of season, someone might have been selling it for a long time, and people often tend to take a really good price for out of season items. Also, when you're shopping secondhand out of season, you're actually like doing it in advance and you're planning your wardrobe in advance. And then once the season comes around, it's going to be ready to go, and you're not going to be like scrambling and trying to figure out your summer wardrobe in the midst of summer. So for me personally, a month ago, mid-winter here in Australia, I did a bit of a secondhand online summer shop and really like planned out my summer wardrobe. I got a few pieces and I've already got those pieces altered and they are now in my wardrobe ready to go for summer. So I made a video styling those pieces, and if you'd like to watch it, it is up on the screen now. As always, I am so grateful for you watching today's video. If you have things to add, please add them in the comments below. It's a great way to learn from each other. I'm sure you guys have plenty more tips as well. Don't forget to spread kindness this week, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.